All right, I think we'll probably get started here. I was waiting for things to populate, and it looks like should be fine now. Let's go to live chat and all messages. There we go. Awesome. If you're here today, thank you for spending your time here as I begin restoring this book. This is a really interesting book, and I got it by way of eBay. It's The Golden Key to Heaven, and this particular book was printed by the Benziger Brothers. Benziger Brothers, at one point, were the official printers to the Holy See. That means they printed everything for the Vatican, and or at least they were one of a couple, perhaps, that were printing for the Vatican. And this book was printed in 1884. So if you're an American, the Archbishop of New York at the time was John Cardinal McCloskey. So a lot of the books that I have are from Cardinal McCloskey, and it's a really interesting book. And I say that because this book had a really interesting history to it. I received it, and I had an unexpected visitor. That's all I'm going to say. If you haven't seen the video, I recommend you check it out on my YouTube page. It's a video that I titled Jesus Came to Me in This Book, or just Jesus Appeared to Me in This Book is what I called it. Interesting story. And there's a lot of really cool things inside of this book. Little ribbons. There were flower petals. There's a little ribbon. And I think this is silk. I wish it was really easy to get the silk these days, but it's not. What else is in here? There's little pieces of paper, which I'm not sure what they are, but I'm going to take them out as I find them. You find some really cool things in books. I have found, insurance licenses. I found autographs from famous people. I have found locks of hair. I've found all kinds of different things in books. So it's fun to find that stuff. But let me show you these two pieces of paper that I found inside of this book. I don't know what they are. I'm going to hold them up here. Perhaps you're going to be able to see them. And I'm just going to leave it up there for just a second here while I check the focus. There's a little delay between my little monitor and the camera that I'm using. It looks pretty good. Really interesting penmanship, You look at old pieces of paper, the way that people used to write. It's so unique. So unique. But I'm not sure what this piece of paper was. Here in this piece of paper, you can see almost a stamp, an apostolic stamp of some sort, maybe a parish record, or I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it is. It has the year, and something with a Z, ZA, and on the bottom, NA, and then it's cut off, and then it says PA, so maybe this is Philadelphia, who knows. But those are two interesting pieces of paper. This is marked 1898. What does that mean? I have no idea. What happened in 1898? Why did this person feel it was important for them to write it on a piece of paper and put it in a prayer book? I don't know. I have no idea. And that's the fun part of restoration. You get to see people's lives. You get to see what people found important to preserve. But off the bat, I know that there's a couple of things that I'm going to do for this book. By the way, I'm giving it away. The boards are off. They have separated because the leather has dried. And so I'm going to create a hinge that's going to make it so that these boards are reattached and usable. So that's important. The cover looks great. I think I may touch it up a little bit. And the spine definitely needs some work. You can see it's peeling off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the spine off and put a reinforced structure here between the spine and the outer cover, which is called a hollow. And the hollow allows for the text block, as you're opening it, to have the shape that it wants to have, which you may be able to see there, but it's not allowed to have when you glue a spine onto the text block. So it's a way to improve the flexibility of the book and without compromising the spine here, because sometimes you'll see it on other books that have been poorly cared for. I saw it in one of the books that I repaired, which is an 1883 Irish prayer book. The spine was glued directly to the outside leather, and you can see that there's little cracks in the leather as people were using it as the leather dries out. So that's the order of business for this book. I'm not going to change the end pages here. I'm going to keep them the same, and I'm going to maybe add a hinge between here and the text block. This is the front cover. So there's going to be a hinge here on the inside and a hinge on the outside, making it usable again. And in another video, because I don't think I'm going to be able to finish all of this in one video, I'm going to create a, what do they call these? A clasp. I'm going to create a clasp, and I'm going to attempt to recreate one from another book that is of the same era. So that's what's coming. I think we'll begin with some of the repairs, but before I do, today's May 9th, and I have another book from the same era. This book was printed by the Benziger Brothers, and this one was printed in 1887, and it's the Pictorial Lives of the Saints, and I thought maybe I'd give you a little dose of inspiration today. Today we commemorate St. Gregory Nazianzen on May 9th, and I'll give you a look at the plate that is inside of this book. The plate is the illustration. You can take a look at St. Gregory there. And for those of you who have just joined into the live stream, thank you very much again for joining me. Why don't you leave a comment so I can give you a shout out. So this is the account of Gregory Nazianzen. Gregory was born of saintly parents and was the chosen friend of Saint Basil. They studied together at Athens, turned at the same time from the fairest worldly prospects, and for some years lived together in seclusion, self-discipline, and toil. Gregory was raised almost by force to the priesthood, which I find it funny that they printed that, because you can't force somebody into the priesthood, because that is somebody who's forced into the sacrament. Any sacrament invalidates the sacrament. So maybe they meant it was almost by force, but he actually wanted to. I hope it's that, and I think in his later life you'll realize that it's most likely that. It continues saying, and was in the time made Bishop of Nazianzen by St. Basil, who had become Archbishop of Caesarea. When he was 50 years old, he was chosen for his rare gifts and for his conciliatory disposition to be the Patriarch of Constantinople, then distracted and laid waste by Arian and other heretics. In that city, he labored with wonderful success. The Arians were so irritated at the decay of their heresy that they pursued the saint with outrage, calumny, and violence, and at length resolved to take away his life. For this purpose, they chose a resolute young man who readily undertook the sacrilegious commission. But God did not allow him to carry it out. He was touched with remorse and cast himself at the saint's feet, avowing his sinful intent. St. Gregory at once forgave him, treated him with all kindness, and received him amongst his friends, to the wonder and edification of the whole city, and to the confusion of the heretics, whose crime had served only as a foil to the virtue of the saint. St. Jerome boasts that he had sat at his feet and calls his master and his catechism, calls him his master and his catechist in Holy Scripture. But his lowliness, his austerities, and the insignificance of his person, and above all his very success, drew down on him the hatred of the enemies of the faith. He was persecuted by the magistrates, stoned by the rabble, and thwarted and deserted even by his brother bishops. During the Second General Council, he resigned his see, hoping thus to restore peace to the tormented city, and retired to his native town, where he died in AD 390. He was a graceful poet, a preacher at once eloquent and solid, and as a champion of the faith so well equipped, so tremendous, so strenuous, and so exact that he is called St. Gregory the Theologian. What can we learn from St. Gregory today? Well, the reflection is, we must overcome our enemies by gentleness, win them over by forbearance, let them be punished by their own conscience, not by our wrath. Let us not at once wither the fig tree, from which a more skillful gardener may yet entice fruit. Thus, according to St. Gregory. That's the life of the saint today. And just one quick thing I'll show you. This is a book that I recently bound with a brand new case. If you're interested in that, seeing how I did that, there's a video that I just uploaded, which is on the legacy of Archbishop Lefebvre, whose signature is in that book. But let's get to work here on this one. I'm going to put it between two boards so I can protect the text block. Okay, it's nice and secure. And I love this workbench that I got. I got this at Goodwill almost a year ago. Really great deal. These usually go for, they probably go for about 130, 140 bucks, or maybe closer to 200 actually, last time I checked. And I got this for $30. It was a great deal. And it works perfectly for bookbinding because I can have hollows. So I have, my vise here that I can put small books into. It doesn't work really well with big books. And I can configure it so that I have a waste pocket here. So if I'm cutting things, I can throw it in here, sweep them up later. Very convenient. Thank you, Black & Decker, for creating this design. It works really well for what I need. So here I am, tightening up the vise. I'll make sure it's nice and square. And I'm going to lock it in. Now this live stream really isn't about the tools that I use, but I think I'm going to make a video about that later down the line. But I'll tell you about some of the tools that I have here just as a general, in a general way. This is a sort of a spatula that I found in this toolbox that I inherited from my father. All of my tools have been from my father. And I don't know what he would have used this for. He was an upholsterer, so I never saw him use this before, but it's the perfect tool for me. I use this. This is probably the most well-used tool in my toolbox, this little spatula with a point at the end. And it looks like we have John Stasny here. Really great seeing you in the live stream. I have a very old copy of The Key of Heaven. Very awesome. Paul Cullen of Dublin. Is this the same book or different? Yeah, I've seen that before. I think it might be similar. I don't know if it's the same. it might be different because this is actually called The Golden Key, and I've seen other books that are called The Key to Heaven. So I think there's a little bit of difference there. However, a lot of the prayers must be the same. They, you know, I've seen a lot of different prayer books from this era, and they tend to have almost the same thing inside of them verbatim, but they're printed by different people, and of course, because of copyright, they have different names. With exception to that Irish prayer book that I just recently restored, because that book, I think it was specifically made for the Irish that left Ireland and started living in the United States. It wasn't directly because of the famine or anything like that, because at that point they must have had maybe a first or second generation family here in the United States. There's enough time for that to have happened. But still, I think it was specifically made for Irish immigrants who are living here in the United States. So that's an interesting book. It has different prayers that I've never seen before, and a lot of devotion to St. Patrick. So I'm taking my little spatula, and I'm going in here and I'm separating the spine material from I'm separating the material, the leather material on the outside, from the spine. And I'm doing it very carefully. As I'm doing this, I'm keeping a close eye to the material on the outside. If I see any sort of cracking or stress points or anything like that, I tend to stop and reevaluate what I'm doing, because in this case, it's very important for me to retain this outer spine. It has a lot of character. It's also in very good shape. And here I'm running into just a little bit of resistance, but most of it has come off. And I'll show you what's underneath here. Just a piece of hard backing paper. Janice, welcome to the stream. Thanks for joining us. And it's come off. One of the little pieces of the book has come with it. You can see there's some cardboard here. Most likely this is acidic. And you can see here most of that cardboard has remained here on the spine. This is an end band, and I mentioned in my last video that it's not just a cosmetic thing. At this point it might have been cosmetic, because really it doesn't really serve a lot of purpose, especially in a small book. In a small book, if you're pulling it off the shelf from the spine, and the book doesn't have a lot of weight for you to actually damage the spine doing that. What damages the spine the most is the leather drying out and you continuing to use the book. But in this case, I think that the end, these end bands are mostly cosmetic. And unfortunately, there is a piece of leather that has remained on the spine itself. I'm trying to evaluate what this is. Ah, yes, okay. So we're going to hold on to this. It's where the leather wraps over the end band. And I don't know if you can see it closely. The part that wraps over has remained on the end band. So I'm going to save this because I want to keep that piece of leather, and I'm going to salvage it. But there's the outer covering. I'm going to set that aside, as well as the other end band. And I'm going to begin by taking some paste and applying it to the spine so that I can remove the old glue and the old material that has remained here. I can manually do that. I try not to do that because some of the glue will flake off and also take with it some of the thread that they use to sew this book together. And sometimes it even rips the signatures, and so it compromises the structure of the book. So I'm going to take some paste, which I made yesterday. And I'm Now the paste is going to act as a way of softening this material, the old glue. At this time they were using hide glue, and hide glue is reconstituted by moisture. So if you put any sort of moisture on it, it tends to weaken the glue, and you can scrape it off manually with a spatula or something else. I'm not seeing a lot of glue on the spine, so I'm just going to put it where it needs it. And this this paste also acts as a glue when you're putting down end pages or something like that. When you're gluing your pages onto your board, you can use this. This is made out of wheat flour and water, and it's just called wheat paste. I make this, I want to say maybe once or twice a month. It's quite easy to do. And I put this on the spine, and I let it sit, and I let the moisture seep into the spine. I'm going to see if it's working. I think it needs time. I'm not going to push it. While that's going, I'm going to loosen this and move it out of the way. Put it up here so I can keep working on other things. One thing that I've discovered over time, doing this for a couple of years now, is you really have to have the latitude to do one thing and move on and do something else. Otherwise, you're waiting for glue to dry, you're waiting for glue to seep into the old paper, and you can waste a lot of time doing that. If you're trying to make this profitable, you really have to kind of move things along. This is a volume game. So I'm going to move on to the next step, which is to create a piece of kozo paper, which is an Asian long grain paper that is the perfect size for this book, and it's going to act as that interior hinge that I mentioned on the book. And I have a couple pieces here. This is what it looks like. That's what it sounds like. And I'm going to place this over the book. Let's see. It's almost the perfect size, but I'm going to cut it shorter. Here's another tool I use. I inherited this one from my father-in-law. This is his square. I use squares quite a bit, and I use also this ruler when I'm cutting down large stock. And boy, is it warm in Texas now. Starting to become unbearable. All right, cut that down. Let's take a look at what we have here. It's a good size. We don't need much. We need the width of the book and probably, I don't know, maybe half an inch on each side. So let's go with this amount. You always want to have a little bit more just in case you want to cut it down. And so I find myself giving myself a little bit of latitude here with this material. I will have to cut it down because I'm going to tuck it into the book boards in the front. So this is it. Looks like that. I'm going to make a note, H for head, and on the bottom, the tail. That's what they call it. Those are specific terms to the book. Top of the book is called the head, bottom, the tail. Doesn't really matter at this point. I just made a marking here so I know this is the exact paper that I need for that part. And then I'm going to make the hollow part as well. And for that, I have another piece of cozy. The hollow is basically a tube, and the tube sits directly on the spine, and when you open the book, I can actually show you what that looks like. It creates a hollow, just like that. Keeps it off of the spine, and it allows the book to lay flat. It allows the book to do what it wants to do, which is to open up and cascade the pages like that. If it's stuck to the spine, again, there's a lot of stress on the spine. So I'm going to create the hollow. The hollow is very specific. It's the width of the entire text block. So I'm making a crease here with my thumb. It's okay if it's a little bit smaller. And with my straight edge, I'm going to make this line square. And that's going to allow me to create this hollow very precisely. Let me make sure this end is square. It's just a little off square. Let's see if I can correct it. It's close enough. All right, here's our first line. I'm going to keep the ruler there, and I'm going to use my bone folder. This is actually made of bone. And I'm going to run the bone folder along the ruler, and that's giving me a very clean and precise fold. I'm going to fold that over. And then I'm going to lay my ruler at the very edge of this, and I'm going to make one more fold. And once I fold it over, you're going to see the tube structure. Oops. Victor, my man, welcome. Everybody needs to check out Mendoza Leatherworks. Mendoza Leatherworks. Victor does amazing work with leather. If you have missiles that you want to cover for, I don't know if he's taking commissions right now, but keep an eye on him because he can make one for you. Mendoza Leatherworks. All right, I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna make a line along the edge, and I'm gonna use my ruler and just do it by eye. It's okay if it's a little short. It's gonna get glued underneath. So these two pieces will get glued. And it creates a tube. And this tube gets glued onto the spine, and again, it separates that outer material from the spine so that it has room to be safe from being creased, by the use of the book. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this down to size. And I like my hollows to be not the same size of the book because I don't want to see it. When I open it. the same size as this. Maybe a little bit more. Just eyeballing it. I'm going to put this back on here. Make a nice straight cut. All right, there's the hollow. There's my little hinge for the inside. And I think enough time has passed for us to peel away the material that has been moistened by the paste that we put in. Let's get rid of that. Put our tools away. Keeping your workspace clean, I have found to be the most efficient thing that you can do if you're doing any sort of craft, if you're doing anything like this. If you have a messy workspace, it's gonna stress you out. So I always make sure to clean as I'm going. If there's dust on the floor, if I have a downtime, if down moment, I sweep, throw everything away, keep everything really clean. It really helps as I'm working on these books. And it looks like some of it is coming up, which is pretty good. Hopefully you can see this. If not, let me adjust the book. What would we do without Harbor Freight? A little roll of paper here from Harbor Freight. They should sponsor me. I'm going to use this piece of paper just to scrape off all the old stuff. It's going to be harder for me, but better for you to see. I'm going to turn it this way so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm removing the material here. So I'm scraping with this spatula. The spatula is not sharp. It's actually very dull at the end. And I did that by design because I don't want to be scraping off the paper itself. I'm just trying to scrape off the old glue and the the paper that they glued on top of the book block. I don't want to be cutting into the threads that they use to sew the signatures either. And among other cool things that I found in books, on the spine, some manufacturers would use scraps of paper from other books, and they use that for the materials that I cut. So for the the inside hinge or the hollow, they'll use scraps from other books, and you see them, and it's very interesting. I have one here behind me, but I'll show you something more interesting than the one I have inside. So in this book that I had from Archbishop Lefebvre, the book was obviously rebound. I figured that out by, like midway through the repair. The original intent was for me to keep the original, the original boards, the original spine material, but the leather was in very poor shape. This came from England, and I think that it was exposed to moisture, and it was not cooperating. I tried to consolidate the leather, which was really badly damaged, had a lot of red rot, and it wasn't working. All the outside material was peeling off from the spine, so I couldn't save it. But after that, I decided, okay, I'm just going to keep the decorative end papers on the inside. So I scraped those off, and what did I find in there? I found one of those scraps of paper, like I mentioned to you. The printer, or the bookbinder, used another scrap of paper and put it in there. So I'm not sure what this is. Some sort of manual, I would presume. It says here 825. Sacramento Ordinis Traditur Potestas, and it's cut off there, but I believe this has something to do with Episcopal consecrations in the Catholic Church. So for whatever reason, they just had a scrap page with that on there. But you find interesting things in books. And I'm going to continue here with the removal of the old glue. What the heck? Looks like I lost the string here. That's unfortunate. That is real unfortunate. I don't know where I ended off here. I kept talking, but now I'm just removing the old glue. Okay. And then I'll reposition this. Wheat paste is a fantastic adhesive because you can reverse it. Just like the hide glue, you can reverse it with moisture. And so for conservation work, it's the go-to. Most people use this. I've wondered maybe why some people haven't used hide glue, because it's period accurate, but most people use wheat paste or wheat starch or rice starch. Lots of different starches that you can use as an adhesive that are reversible. So the difference between conservation work and reparation work, typically conservation work, you are retaining everything that you can so that it doesn't remove anything of historical value. So if I was purely conserving the book that I just repaired with Archbishop Lefebvre's signature, I would not have put brand new leather on the outside. I chose to do a repair because along the way, the outside spine disintegrated, and also I found out that it was not the first time it was bound. So I didn't think it was going to hurt anything if I repaired it instead of conserved it. So this looks pretty good. I'm going to take a little rag and just kind of wipe off the excess here. And I'm going to then lay down another layer of paste. But before I do that, I'm going to flip my boards over. So there's the spine. Very flexible at this point. So I'm just going to put it here on the edge. Keep it out of harm's way. And we'll just flip the boards over. Now, since I'm going to be gluing the little piece of material here that's going to act as the hinge, now that I have it out, I'm going to make sure that the shape of the spine is the way that I actually want it. And it looks like one side is higher than the other. So I'm going to try and fix that. the hide glue, it smells like beef jerky. That glue is made, it's obviously made out of animal protein, so, but it's got this very unique beefy smell to it. And in the mix is the smell of the book itself, which I've discovered is the reason why books smell a certain way. People actually talk about the way that a book smells is because it's decomposing. So the paper's decomposing. That's what you're smelling. You're smelling the decomposition of the book. The book is falling apart before your very eyes. Okay, so one side looks good. The other side, however, does not. Let's see if I can shape this out a little bit better. Because once you glue on the hinge, it's going to be hard to get that shape back. Let me take this out. I'm going to do this by eye. Back in the vise. And now we're laying down our paste one more time. This time all the way to the end, because I want the spine to be retaining its structure. Gonna scrape off the sides. And I'm gonna lay down my material, which is gonna act again as that inside hinge. I'm gonna position it right in the middle of the book, and the material is draping over, and that's how I know where the center is. But it doesn't matter, I'm going to actually cut it, because this part is getting tucked inside this leather. It's underneath the leather of the boards. All right, I'm going to take, hey Sharon, welcome to the stream. I'm going to take my bone folder. And I should have cleaned this off because it has some dye from another project, but that's okay. This is on the inside. Nobody actually gets to see this unless they repair it in the future. So here I am putting pressure on this piece of Asian paper, long grain paper, very strong type of paper for the inside hinge of the book. The pressure ensures that it makes contact with every signature on the spine. And it also spreads the glue evenly into the fibers of the paper, which will form a lot of the structure of the spine. Again, the paste is activated by moisture, so the way that the book is stored is really going to be important after this. Yeah. The hide glue, I think it takes a lot of moisture. I mean, you saw how long it took for it to reconstitute. But this doesn't take very much. However, I'm not really all that worried about it because this book most likely will live another 100 years after what I'm doing. Hey Nick, books are modernist, return to papyrus. So true. So true. Sounds like what an Egyptian would say. All right, that's adhered. I'm going to go over by feel just to make sure that there aren't any voids. I try not to because the fingerprints on your fingers, they act as sort of a sandpaper, and this paper, because it's just a lot of fibers spun together, it tends to remove some of the top layer of the paper. So I try not to do it, but I'm doing this by feel just to make sure there aren't any voids here between the spine and this outside material. And now what I'm going to do is take my spatula and remove it from the boards that are there temporarily so that they don't glue onto the board. And this will dry over time. All right, I'm going to move this again out of the way so I can keep working on something else. Clean off my tools here. And I'm going to remove the brass. What do they call this? I don't know what this is called. But this is a brass border that they added to these prayer books, and they acted as a protection for the book block. They held up really well. I've seen these, they're very common in the era. I'm going to remove it because there's a little bit of patina that's being leached onto the leather itself, and I'm going to need them off for when I tuck in the material I just glued. So if I remember correctly, I think I can just lift it off. Got to do this very carefully. Just gonna slowly move it using the edge of my workbench. And just encourage it to slide off. Being very careful as I'm doing that. This part is stuck down, so I'm encourage it with my spatula. There we go. The traditional tomist is a good friend of mine. I encourage you to check out his channel. He's got a very good video series that he's still working on about the Novus Ordo and comparing it to the traditional Latin Mass, and just being very academic about the critique of the Novus Ordo. So if you're interested in that, check out the traditional Thomist. There's that brass border, so I'm going to remove that. Let me know, should I polish it? Do you think maybe I should polish it for the giveaway, or should I just keep it as is? So that's one. And here's the other one. Just using the edge of my workbench to encourage it to come off. I also have to take this off to straighten the back part because it's very warped. Okay. It looks like I'm being very rough with it, but I'm taking it off very carefully, I assure you. So that part I will have to straighten out and do a little bit of work on, but I'm going to take this flat part of the spatula again, and I'm going to tuck it between the board and the outside material here on the leather, and I'm going to create a pocket in which that material can be glued to. And it came out very easily, that little pocket. Sometimes the leather breaks off, you know, find a lot of resistance there, but this is doing it very, very well. So that's where the extra material will live. It gets tucked inside. Okay, let's straighten out this border. I'm going to do it by eye. Turning it in my hand. Then putting it down on my workbench and twisting it. The brass is very strong. It's a very forgiving material. And I'm placing it on the workbench. I'm seeing where the high areas are. This part is high, so I'm going to bend this out a little bit. See how we did. A little bit more would be good. Close enough. All right, now let's get rid of some of that patina on here. I don't know, maybe actually I'll keep it. It looks cool. I like the way that turns green with time. So put a little bit of paste to remove it. Nice. Let me go over it with a little bit of leather dye eventually. Not right now. So that's all that I'm going to do with these boards. The brass border will come on probably at the end. I have to make another latch, like I mentioned. I have a piece of brass that I am oxidizing so that it'll match this color. Although I could just polish this and it would match, but I think having the old look would be a little bit better. Now the last thing I'm going to do before I close out the stream, and again I'm going to do another stream eventually, second stream putting it all together, I'm going to remove the paper from here. So lay down a bit of paste. I don't want to put paste on my workbench. So I'm going to take a piece of wax paper. And I'm going to lay down the paste on this piece of paper. And it's going to work on the adhesive there. And on the front, I'm going to consolidate the leather using what's called Klucel G. This is a very, very light adhesive. And what it does is it makes the leather kind of stick back together, especially the leather that's been affected by red rot, which is the atrophy of the leather due to age, the drying up of the materials over time. It does darken the leather quite a bit, but I think that it will lighten up eventually. So here I am just doing a pass of this consolidant. Some of the tags here on the edge I will have to remove eventually. But I want to make sure I don't lose the curvature of the spine here. So I'm going to work to remove this paper. removing the paper because it's acidic. But it may take some time before I'm able to fully remove it here. Put a little bit more paste. I'm just going to go around it here. But that's as far as I'm going to go today. And thank you again for spending some time here with me. Eventually, I'm going to be giving away this book. And all you have to do is subscribe. So subscribe to the channel if you're passing through. And I'm going to give this away to one lucky subscriber. And in the next video, the next live stream, I'm going to attach the hollow. I'm going to reattach the boards. And I'm going to work on making a new latch for this little prayer book. But thanks again for joining me, and God bless you and Mary keep you. Have a great day. Wherever you are, maybe say a prayer for me and for my holy intentions. And I'll do the same for you. All right, take care.